This did not happen in a secret military bunker hidden deep beneath the Nevada desert, nor did it unfold aboard an experimental space station orbiting the silent Earth. It happened in the very heart of civilized Europe, within the sterile, ultra-modern laboratories of applied physics near Zurich. This was a sanctuary of predictable figures, of nanometers and stable results, a place where order was the reigning deity. But at 2 o'clock in the afternoon on a Tuesday, the protocols of safety were not merely breached, they were annihilated by a force that modern science had relegated to the realm of impossibility. At first, it was barely perceptible, a thin, almost ghostly vibration on the surface of water in glasses set upon lab benches. Then came a strange, low-frequency hum. It was not a sound heard by the ears, but a pressure wave that spoke not to the ear, but to the diaphragm. A sudden, inexplicable anxiety seized every one of the 40 employees in the building, a deep, primordial fear. 3 minutes later, seismographs operated by the Swiss Seismological Service within a 30-kilometer radius recorded anomalous activity. The needles, normally tracing the placid heartbeat of the region, began to thrash. This was not an earthquake. The tectonic plates were dormant. This was a rhythm, an artificial, escalating, surgically precise beat emanating from a single point. At 14:15, a code red was declared. This was no drill. Scientists, engineers, and technical staff fled in a state of panic, abandoning personal effects, documents, and equipment worth millions. They were not running from a fire, nor from a chemical or radiological leak. They were fleeing a sound, a vibration that had begun to destroy the building's reinforced concrete from within, forcing steel to groan under an invisible strain and glass to explode into crystalline dust. The source of this chaos was a small, unremarkable metal object mounted on a test stand in the isolated chamber B, a device that had remained silent for 80 years. A device created by a man whose name has become a synonym for electricity itself, for towering genius, and for a madness that brushed against the divine. Nikola Tesla. The world believed his inventions had been studied, catalogued, and rendered safe within museums. The world was wrong. What they had activated in Zurich was not a generator of free energy. It was the legendary and deeply feared Tesla oscillator. The events of those 15 minutes forced physicists to redraw the very boundaries of the possible. We had opened a Pandora's box, one sealed in 1943 by agents of the FBI. And now we must confront the terrifying truth. We must ask why the United States government moved to confiscate the inventor's archives before his body had even grown cold. And why this small, unassuming mechanism holds the power to accomplish what even a nuclear bomb cannot. To comprehend the nature of the force that nearly reduced a Swiss laboratory to ruin, we must first journey back through time, back to the cold, grey heart of a New York January in 1943. The Hotel New Yorker, the 33rd floor, room 3327. In this cramped chamber, surrounded by the gentle cooing of the city pigeons he fed from his window and the silent towers of his own unread schematics, Nikola Tesla would draw his final breath. He was 86 years old. He died in debt, a king in exile, seemingly forgotten by the very world he had illuminated. The solitude of his death, however, was a profound illusion. Within hours of a hotel maid discovering the body, the room was filled with the quiet, purposeful movements of men in austere coats and fedoras. They were not paramedics. They were not relatives. They were agents of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and officials from the Office of Alien Property. Their urgency was not driven by the fear of Axis spies, though the Second World War raged across the globe. It was driven by a far deeper fear, the fear of the ideas contained within the mind of a single, deceased man. Their target was not the body, it was the papers. Dozens of heavy crates, trunks, and lockboxes were carried not through the grand lobby, but spirited away through the hotel's service corridors, disappearing into the anonymity of the night. The official narrative, carefully crafted for the press, was one of due diligence. The government, it was said, merely wished to ensure that the scientists' sensitive work contained nothing of value to the enemy. But what were they truly searching for with such feverish haste? In the declassified FBI files, made public only recently through the Freedom of Information Act, lie unsettling clues. There are mentions of a death ray, of teleforce, and, most crucial to our story, a technology he termed telegeodynamics. For years, Tesla had claimed in interviews that he could transmit mechanical energy directly through the Earth's crust, sending vibrations to any point on the globe with almost zero loss of power. He told journalists with unnerving confidence that he could force for a sufficient period. The scientific world of his time met these pronouncements with derision. They were dismissed as the delusions of a fading mind, a desperate attempt to attract the attention of investors who had long since abandoned him. But the agents hauling away his life's work were not laughing. They knew something the newspapers did not. They knew that in the year 1898, Tesla had already put his theory to a terrifying test. The story, pieced together from police records and witness accounts, unfolds on a single day in his laboratory at 46 East Houston Street. Calls began to flood the Manhattan police precinct. Residents of Chinatown and Little Italy reported a sudden, violent earthquake. Furniture danced across floors, windows shattered in their frames, and plaster rained down from the ceilings. Yet seismographs in other parts of the city remained silent. The convulsion was impossibly local. Its epicenter was not deep within the earth, but inside the brick building that housed Tesla's laboratory. When police battered down the door, they found a scene of chaos, with the inventor standing alone. In his hand, a sledgehammer, which he frantically used to smash a small iron device bolted to a central support beam of the building. He destroyed it just moments before the entire structure might have collapsed. He would later confess, "I could have brought down the Brooklyn Bridge in under an hour, using an oscillator no bigger than an alarm clock." The line between a planet-shattering weapon and a source of limitless energy had been drawn, not in a government facility, but in the mind of one man. A mind whose secrets were now the property of the state, locked away from a world not yet ready, or perhaps never to be ready, for such terrible knowledge. It was a story told to quell the whispers of a terrible power, a legend polished by time that the device had been destroyed forever, that Nikola Tesla, horrified by the sheer force he had unleashed, had burned the blueprints himself, leaving no trace. But the archives, sealed and silent for decades, tell a very different story. Among the papers confiscated by the American government after his death, hidden within sheaves of electrical theory, were detailed schematics, not of the original oscillator, but of an evolved, perfected version, a version 2.0. The culmination of an idea Tesla had quietly refined for the last 40 years of his life in the solitude of hotel rooms. And now, 80 years after his passing, one of these lost prototypes, forged in metal, has finally surfaced. The trail leads us not to a secret laboratory, but to the quiet back roads of rural Virginia, to a private auction where the estate of a military engineer's descendant was being sold off. This engineer had been part of a small, select team in the 1950s, tasked with sifting through the Tesla archives, a project conducted under the official review of a man named John George Trump, a brilliant MIT engineer and the uncle of a future American president. Amidst the old furniture, the dusty books and the faded military uniforms, one item stood out: a heavy chest bound in copper that time had tarnished to a deep, murky brown. Inside, there was no gold, no jewels. There was a mechanism, a strange, almost primitive-looking assembly, no larger than a shoebox. It was a complex lattice of pistons, springs coiled from an alloy of no known standard, and a series of powerful electromagnets. Tucked beside it was a notebook, filled with annotations in both Serbian and English. The handwriting was angular, sharp, unmistakable. It was the hand of Tesla. The buyer, an anonymous private collector of arcane technologies, knew instantly that he was holding something far more significant than a mere antique. The device was carefully transported to an independent research group in Europe, to a discreet institute in Zurich for analysis. The scientists there expected to find a curiosity, perhaps an early, clumsy version of an electro-generator. But when their engineers, using modern precision tools, opened the casing, a stunned silence fell over the lab. The quality of the internal machining was shocking. The tolerances were measured in microns, a level of precision that was extraordinary for the era. The metal alloys used in the core of the piston did not match the metallurgical standards of the 1940s. They were purer, stronger, forged without the impurities that should have been present. This was not the rambling creation of an old man in decline. It was an instrument of profound precision, built with techniques that outpaced its time by decades. In his notebook, Tesla called it his earthquake machine. But its principle was not E. It is the principle that can fell a steel bridge with nothing more than the synchronized footfalls of a marching battalion. Only instead of soldiers, Tesla's early versions had used compressed air and steam. This final, perfected iteration used invisible, oscillating magnetic fields. Before attempting to activate it, the researchers chose a safer path. They began a process of reverse engineering, disassembling it virtually, piece by piece, to create a perfect computer model. The simulation yielded terrifying results. This small, unassuming box was capable of generating mechanical vibrations of a hyper-specific frequency. It was a key, designed to unlock the natural, resonant frequency of any material. It could find the vibration of steel, of concrete, of the very bedrock beneath a city, and begin to hum along, amplifying its own power with each cycle until the target simply shook itself into dust. The simulation was halted. The device, now understood, remains silent. It serves as a testament not only to a mind that saw a century into the future, but to the terrifying responsibility that comes with such vision. A quiet, copper-bound box that asks a profound question. Are there some doors of knowledge that, once opened, can never truly be closed? Of steel, of concrete, of granite, of glass. In his private journals, Nikola Tesla recorded a chillingly simple principle. To move a mountain, he wrote, one does not require the cataclysmic force of an atomic blast. One needs only to push it at precisely the right moment. Everything in the universe vibrates, a silent, invisible hum that animates all matter. Find the resonant frequency of the Earth itself, he theorized, and the concept is deceptive in its simplicity. Imagine a swing in a deserted playground, occupied by a grown man weighing over 200 pounds. One could attempt to move him with a single, massive shove, an act of brute force, exhausting and inefficient. Or one could apply pressure with nothing more than a little finger. If the pushes are chaotic, random, the great weight barely stirs. But if each gentle touch is timed perfectly, applied at the precise apex of the swing's return journey, in perfect sympathy with its own natural motion, the amplitude begins to grow. With each cycle, the arc widens. After 100 such pushes, the swing soars towards the sky. Tesla's oscillator was designed to do precisely this, not with a playground swing, but with the very bedrock of our world. It was designed to find the note on which an object sang, whether a single steel girder in a skyscraper or the tectonic plate of a continent. And once it found that note, it would begin to amplify it. In a modern laboratory, a team of researchers decided to put the legend to the test. They took a surviving artifact, a machine born of a 19th century mind, and prepared it for the 21st. They painstakingly replaced the crumbling insulation of its wiring, swapped desiccated gaskets for modern polymer analogues, and connected the device to a stable power source. They placed it upon a massive slab of reinforced concrete, a monolith weighing 2 tons secured within an acoustically isolated, soundproof chamber. High-definition cameras were activated. Laser vibrometers, calibrated to detect the most infinitesimal tremor, were focused on the slab. No one truly expected the theory to work, not with the terrifying, catastrophic efficiency the inventor had once claimed. The moment of activation was captured in stark detail. There was no crackle of lightning, no shower of sparks as depicted in the fictions of Frankenstein. There was only the quiet, dry click of a relay. And then a steel piston inside the device began to move. At first, it was slow, up and down, up and down. The rhythm was metronomic, the sound akin to the steady, calming beat of a clockwork heart. The scientists, observing from behind armored glass in the adjacent control room, exchanged skeptical glances. The instruments showed a negligible energy draw, less than that of a single incandescent light bulb. For a full minute, it seemed that nothing was happening. It was an expensive toy vibrating gently on a concrete table. But then, at exactly 120 seconds, the sensors monitoring the concrete slab began to scream. The piston's amplitude, its physical movement, remained unchanged, but the energy it was transferring into the 2-ton block was no longer growing in a straight line. It was multiplying exponentially. This was the avalanche effect Tesla had warned of. The device was intelligent. It was mechanically programmed for self-tuning. It was feeling the material beneath it, sending out probing waves and listening for the echo. It was searching for the slab's hidden weakness, its unique resonant signature. And then it locked on. The 2-ton slab of concrete began to hum. It was a low, guttural, resonant tone that seemed to emanate from the very air in the chamber. This was not the sound of a motor at work. This was the song of the concrete itself. Its crystalline lattice, the very structure of its being, was being stretched and compressed, pulled into a sympathetic vibration that grew more violent with every passing second. The experiment had not just replicated an old theory, it had awakened a fundamental and terrifying law of the universe. A reminder that the most profound forces are not those of brute strength, but of perfect, terrible timing. At the 5-minute mark, the experiment was no longer an experiment. It was a containment failure. The vibration, once a controlled hum isolated within the test stand, refused to be caged. It began to seep through the layers of acoustic insulation, a tremor that bled downwards, finding its way into the deep concrete foundation and from there into the very steel skeleton of the building. Across the facility, on different floors, the first reports came in. Staff in adjacent laboratories, unaware of the test, began to complain of a sudden, inexplicable sickness. A wave of nausea, a disorienting vertigo, a creeping sense of baseless panic that tightened the chest. They were feeling the ghost in the machine. This was the physical assault of infrasound, acoustic waves pitched below 20 Hz, too low for the human ear to register as sound, but perfectly tuned to resonate with the body. It was a silent roar that vibrated the vestibular system, that shook the internal organs, a pressure wave felt not in the ears, but in the bones. The subtle unease gave way to tangible chaos. In the second-floor cafeteria, glasses of water began to skitter across tabletops as if moved by an unseen hand. In the ground-floor workshops, heavy industrial lathes and milling machines, weighing several tons, began to jolt and hop on their moorings. High above, light fixtures swung with a terrifying and ever-increasing amplitude, casting wild, drunken shadows across the walls. The lead researcher, Dr. Schneider, tried to sever the power remotely. His finger slammed down on the emergency shutdown button, a command that should have instantly silenced the device. But the system was deaf. There was no response. The machine had created its own storm. The ferocious mechanical resonance had generated an electromagnetic field so powerful, a piezoelectric effect blooming within the stressed concrete itself, that the delicate control electronics inside the chamber had been instantly and irrevocably fried. The device was now autonomous. It had entered a terrifying state of self-sustaining oscillation, seemingly feeding on the very destructive vibrations it produced. It had become a perpetual motion engine of pure destruction. The laboratory, a structure engineered to meticulous Swiss standards of seismic resilience, began to groan. Microfractures spiderwebbed across load-bearing walls, transforming before horrified eyes into gaping fissures. Plaster rained down from the ceilings. In that moment, the building's automated structural integrity system screamed for help, triggering the general alarm. The evacuation was a frantic scramble. Personnel later described the sensation of the solid ground beneath their feet turning to jelly, to liquid. Walking became an impossible task. Legs buckled, refusing to obey. The very air seemed to grow dense, viscous, and heavy in the lungs. For some, the physical assault became brutally intimate as blood began to trickle from noses and ears, the direct physiological consequence of an acoustic weapon unleashed by accident. A small team of security personnel and volunteers, clad in heavy protective gear, made the decision. They burst into the chamber, armed not with scientific instruments, but with fire axes and sledgehammers. There was no plug to pull, no switch to flip. The machine had to be killed by hand. They swung with desperate force, smashing the piston, shattering the housing, severing the heavy magnetic coils. Only when the device's mechanical heart was savaged into a heap of twisted metal did the deafening, soul-shaking hum finally cease. The concrete slab upon which the instrument had rested, a plinth designed for absolute stability, was clearing repairs that would run into the millions. A small box weighing a mere 5 kilograms had in 15 minutes brought a modern 4-story scientific center to the brink of total collapse. But the analysis of the event shocked the scientific community more than the destruction itself. When they calculated the energy the device had unleashed, they understood. Nikola Tesla, in his theories of telegeodynamics, had not been exaggerating. He had been warning them. They had stumbled upon a fundamental force of the universe, a power that could build worlds or shatter them. and they had learned that some doors of knowledge, once opened, can only be forced shut with iron and brute force. The device functioned not as a machine, but as a key, unlocking the colossal dormant energy hidden within the very elasticity of matter itself. From this realization, a chilling question emerged. What if this instrument were not anchored to a simple concrete slab, but to the bedrock of the Earth, to the exposed root of a tectonic plate? What if it ran not for 15 minutes, but for an hour, a day, a week? Nikola Tesla himself claimed that with such a device, he could cleave the globe in two. The scientists who conducted the recent experiment, in their classified report, penned a frenerator of vibrations, they wrote. We were dealing with an amplifier of entropy. This single, terrifying sentence illuminates the past. It explains the meticulous urgency with which the Federal Bureau of Investigation in 1943 sanitized room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, purging every last schematic, every stray note left by the late inventor. They understood. They understood that in the hands of a madman, a terrorist, or a hostile state, this technology was a specter more terrifying than the atomic bomb. An atomic weapon is a thing of brutal, overt power. It is monstrously difficult to create. Its launch is a flare visible from orbit. It leaves an indelible scar of radiation. The Tesla oscillator, however, is a silent, invisible weapon. It can be assembled in a garage from parts available to the public. It can be hidden in a basement beneath the bustling streets of London, New York, or Tokyo. A simple timer is activated, and the architect of ruin simply walks away. An hour later, the city begins to tremble. Skyscrapers sway, bridges buckle, and the metropolis co-localized and perfectly natural earthquake. No radiation, no blast crater, no evidence. The perfect instrument of terror. The laboratory in Zurich is now sealed, closed for an indefinite time. The building itself has been declared structurally unsound. The instrument, or what remained of it, a mangled ruin of twisted metal and shattered magnets, was immediately confiscated, this time by European intelligence services with American consultants observing. History does not just rhyme, it repeats with a frightening precision. Once again, the quiet arrival of men in dark suits. Once again, the stamp of top secret on sealed crates. Once again, the systematic erasure of evidence. But the genie has already been released from the bottle. Information has bled into the world. Minnescent of 1943. Video recordings of the experiment, captured on the phones of technicians and briefly uploaded, began to vanish from the web. The social media accounts of the scientists involved were frozen. The laboratory's press office issued a bland statement citing a malfunctioning hydraulic press and structural fatigue in an aging facility. But the witnesses, the same evacuated employees, they whisper a different story in hushed tones. They speak not of shaking walls, but of a feeling, an inexplicable, primal horror. This experiment has shown us just how fragile our world truly is. We build our civilizations upon the presumed strength of granite and steel, believing them to be immutable. But Tesla found a back door into the physics of solid matter. He found a way to turn that strength against itself, to make the very foundations of our world devour themselves through resonance. He was not a charlatan. He was a physicist who peered too far into the nature of vibration, into a place we are perhaps not meant to look. And now we live with the chilling knowledge that the blueprints exist, that the principle is proven, and that the world can be unmade not with a bang, but with a hum. It confirms another, and perhaps the most disquieting, of Nikola Tesla's theories: the impact of resonance not on steel or stone, but on the delicate architecture of the human mind. He held a steadfast belief that specific frequencies could be tuned to the very core of our being, capable of inducing not only profound dread, but also unbridled euphoria. He theorized it was possible to command consciousness itself, to synchronize the alpha rhythms of the brain with an external, oscillating will. If his device could threaten the integrity of concrete, one must ask a far more chilling question. What could it do to the fragile electrical web of neural synapses? The medical reports of those affected paint a disturbing picture. A litany of bizarre afflictions, microscopic Hg, and a cascade of strange neurological symptoms, hallucinations, a profound disorientation as if time itself had become unmoored. The evacuation of his laboratory may not have been prompted solely by the fear of collapsing walls, but by a far more primal terror, the dawning realization that people were beginning to lose their sanity, besieged by a frequency tuned to the very essence of fear. Tesla was not merely experimenting with the Earth, he was experimenting with us. To understand this terror, one must first examine the machine itself, documented in fleeting detail before its confiscation. It was a study in brutal elegance, a work of genius in its simplicity. The heart of the machine was an oscillator, driven by a floating piston. Within a cylinder of hardened steel, this free piston surged back and forth under immense, cyclically applied pressure. Tesla's true cunning, however, was revealed in its system of valves and ports. They were not operated mechanically, a method that would have imposed a crude limit on their speed. Instead, they were opened and closed by a cushion of air, a pressure wave generated by the piston's own furious motion. This created a perfect, self-sustaining feedback loop. The faster the piston moved, the more energy it harvested and unleashed into the next cycle. It is the principle of the opera singer shattering a crystal goblet. She does not achieve this through sheer volume. She finds the one precise frequency at which the glass itself wishes to vibrate. She holds the note, and with each pulse of sound, the glass absorbs a packet of energy, accumulating it until its own molecular bonds can no longer endure the strain and fly apart. Tesla's oscillator did precisely this, but its song was for the atoms of steel and stone. Engineers who examined the fragments noted a conspicuous absence: the familiar lubricants and ball bearings of the era. In their place, Tesla had engineered air bearings, a near frictionless film of pressurized air, a technology that would not see widespread application until the late 20th century, reserved for the sterile clean rooms of the aerospace industry. How could he have conceived of this in the 1930s? From where did he acquire the means to machine metal with such impossible precision? It adds another layer of shadow to an already impenetrable mystery. The notion of a geophysical weapon has long been relegated to the fringes, the domain of conspiracy theorists in their tinfoil hats. But this single, verified incident drags the concept from the shadows of speculation into the harsh light of proven, terrifying physics. If a device no larger than a shoebox could shake a modern building to its foundations, imagine what an industrial-scale installation the size of a freight truck could accomplish. Imagine a network of such installations, silently embedded at the planet's most vulnerable pressure points. The San Andreas Fault, the Yellowstone caldera, the vast, volatile Pacific Ring of fire. All that is required is a small, rhythmic and sustained push, a whisper of force applied to a planetary pain point, coaxing it towards a cataclysm that would appear entirely, devastatingly natural. No launch detection, no fiery explosions, no lingering radioactive signature. Just an earthquake, a tsunami, a volcanic eruption. The ultimate weapon is not one that announces its presence with fire and fury, but one that persuades the world to destroy itself, leaving no trace of the hand that guided it. In the year 1935, on the occasion of his birthday, Nikola Tesla made a claim to a room of reporters. The words were dismissed as the grandiloquent fantasy of an aging mind, a final boast from a genius whose time had passed. "I could," he declared, "level the Empire State Building in 15 minutes with a device that would fit in my pocket." Today, architects and civil engineers look toward the heavens, toward the spires of steel and glass that define our modern world, and they do so with a newfound apprehension. Our grandest structures are marvels of engineering, designed to resist the brute force of the wind and the random tremors of the earth. But they were never designed to withstand a focused, insidious attack, an assault not of force, but of rhythm. They were never designed for directed resonance. Every object, from a simple bridge to the most complex skyscraper, possesses a natural, critical frequency. It is the structure's intrinsic hum, its mechanical soul. Should one discover this frequency and apply even a modest amount of energy in perfect time with it, the result is not mere damage, but catastrophic, exponential amplification. The structure is not pushed over, it is shaken apart from within. It is doomed by the laws of physics itself. The theory is sound, the danger palpable. But the blueprints for such a device, the practical application of this planetary-scale weapon, where are they? The story descends into shadow with the inventor's death. In 9, his uncle's vast archive, these papers were shipped to Belgrade, where they now reside in the Nikola Tesla Museum. But before this transfer, the Federal Bureau of Investigation intervened. They meticulously created microfilms of the entire collection, and according to independent researchers who have spent decades piecing together the puzzle, crucial documents were extracted before the official inventory was ever made. The FBI's file on Tesla, even today, is riddled with redactions, entire pages stained black with the ink of censors. What secrets lie beneath? Schematics for oscillators far more powerful than anything publicly known? Diagrams for weather manipulation systems? Or perhaps the most dangerous idea of all, the final perfected plans for the wireless transmission of energy through the ionosphere. A technology that could have rendered oil, gas, and coal obsolete overnight, collapsing global economies and power structures in a single stroke. A recent incident in a Zurich laboratory serves as a chilling footnote. Scientists, working from fragmented notes, constructed a small, seemingly harmless oscillator. They described the exra. They pulled the trigger. The resulting vibrations nearly brought their own facility down around them. They were playing with a fire they could not comprehend. That device in Zurich was destroyed, but the data, the knowledge, remains. Human curiosity, once ignited, cannot be extinguished by a top-secret classification. Somewhere, in another basement, in another nation, another team of engineers is downloading the same fragmented schematics, attempting to recreate the experiment. An invisible race has begun, a silent contest for the power to make cities tremble. We stand on the precipice of a new age, an era of resonant technologies. This power could be a tool for immense good, offering revolutionary methods for geological surveys, for demolition, for mining. Or it could become the ultimate weapon, a force capable of turning our proudest monuments to dust. The choice, as always, rests with us. But one truth is now undeniable. The solid ground beneath our feet will never again feel quite so certain. Tesla revealed that the most seemingly immutable things, the bedrock of the earth, the steel sinews of our civilization, can be undone if one simply finds the right rhythm. The silence in that Zurich laboratory has been restored, but in the minds of scientists and in the war rooms of generals across the globe, a new sound has taken root, a persistent, low hum, a vibration that promises to change everything. Nikola Tesla died in 1943, but it seems his most terrifying invention has only just begun to stir. In the relentless current of events, the world is remade not in centuries, but in moments. A single discovery, a lone voice, can send ripples across the entire landscape of human knowledge. To miss these signals is to risk misunderstanding the very age in which we live. For history does not wait. It unfolds for those who are willing to watch.